Okay, it says we're live, boys. So let's believe in technology, and we'll trust that we're live. Hi, it is Mathew. It's Dr. Dave. It's Chad from Mental Joe, and we're 1 hour early today. But there's a great explanation for that. First up, welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing good. Had a good day. I've had a good week. We're killing some stuff, man. So that's good. We got our fundraising shirt that I talked to you about, VETS. We're about 75% with the approval process. So once we get that design approved, then we can run for the hills and start launching the shirt and selling that and raising money. So new website launch this week. So yeah, there's a bunch of good little nuggets that happened this week. Yeah, we're rolling. We're feeling good.
That's outstanding, because for the last couple of times we've been jumping on, you know, your message has been like, wow, it's crazy, lot going on. It was a tough week, you know, lots of obstacles, red tape. And so it's good to see some of that freeing up, man.
That is, yeah, the momentum. You can feel the momentum shift, because there was a momentum shift that felt like I took 5 steps backwards and I was struggling. So that momentum's starting to kind of take off. So it feels good, and there's some weight off the shoulders. So yeah, everything's moving right along.
That's great. Well, you know, we're really focused here on talking to vets and their supportive teams, family, friends, in an effort to help them lead a better life. And something happened to me this week that I wanted to bring up straight away on our stream today and kind of get everybody's thoughts on it. As you guys know, I've got a podcast called Learn from People Who Lived It, where we talk to people about their trauma and the things that have happened to them along the way. In episode 1, all the way back, Carrie joined us because her son died of an accidental overdose when he was 19 years old. Okay. So we're talking with her about this, that, and the other thing that's going on in her life. And one of the things that she brings up in the interview was that at one point in her life, she was with somebody, and it was clear that that person wasn't having a very good influence on the kids. And then she vividly remembers a couple of scenarios where she could see this poor influence, if you will, directly in the kids. Like now, almost mirroring behavior was starting to take place. And now the kids, you know, they saw this way of being as a green light for them. And that's when she knew, like, it was time to make a change, to do something different. And I thought that would be a wonderful place for all three of us to start today. It's like, how do I know I need help if I can't even see it myself? And so, I mean, we're all shaking our heads, but Dave, I'll let you bat that first. I mean, you must see and hear that all the time. And so what are you thinking about as I share that?
In the relationship context, it's very difficult because, I mean, if you think back even to your own early dating experiences, you know, it's hard to find somebody that you're compatible with and you have things in common and you enjoy spending time together and there's, you know, not major conflict, you know, so people put a lot of time and emotional energy into relationships, and everybody's on their best behavior when they first start seeing each other. In fact, the brain is automatically biased towards only seeing the good things and kind of discounting the bad things early on in a relationship. So there's kind of a blinding effect that takes place. Or, you know, when they say love is blind, that's pretty much what they mean. You don't get a full picture of both the pluses and minuses when you're infatuated with somebody. So now you've invested a bunch of time and now you see where things are going wrong. So the dilemma becomes, okay, how bad is this really? And do I really want to toss everything that I've put into this relationship and start over from scratch and not have the stability of having an extra person around? And, you know, if you're living together, you're sharing expenses. So now you have to think financially, what does that look like? And, you know, if you're actually married, you know, now it's a legal separation and there's a lot of administrative costs to that, if you will. So it becomes tough to know when to pull the trigger on something like that.
Just jumping off with Dr. Dave and his comments there, couldn't agree with it more. I think it's like once you start recognizing repeat patterns, right? Like, you're like, why am I doing this again? What are we doing? Why does this keep arising? Mm-hmm. That's where I was like, okay, like, time to look in the mirror, dipshit. Like there's a common denominator here, right? And for me, it right? was, it was 100% me. But when I was in a good relationship, I found ways to sabotage it, right? Like, create a fight, do something because, I just couldn't get out of my own way. I was used to living in chaos all the time that, let's create chaos because that's what I'm used to. Well, my wife's pretty level-headed, just kind of goes with the flow, really doesn't rock the boat. And, for me, I was like, wow, this is kind of different, someone that actually wants to take care of me instead of me taking care of them. And, you just, from an outside scope, you start to really look at your picture and what makes you happy and how the hell do I stop repeating these same functionalities that I'm doing in life? And that's where it was an aha moment for me of like, okay, it's time. Like we're not in high school anymore. This isn't, we're not at the frat house in college. Like we've got to grow up and figure some shit out. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you for my own self, I think I shared this a couple of weeks ago on our stream, but like when I was dealing with COVID, I got really upset with my fam and I kind of had an outburst that, didn't make me feel very good at the end of it. But, one of the things that I learned in that moment was, or that I got keyed into in that moment was, I'm starting to see some things in my boys that I planted. My behavior over the last, couple of years as I've been sifting through my own mental wellness and health issues has impacted them to a point where I can see glimpses of it, right? And so, that's why I love this question of how do I ask for help when I don't even know I need help? And I'm here to tell you that if you start to see behaviors that you don't think are really awesome in your own kids, or maybe your wife starts treating you differently, or your coworkers start treating you differently, that could be your tee-off moment to know that things aren't going well. Because it's tough, isn't it, Dr. Dave, to communicate to somebody that what they're doing isn't working around here anymore? That's a difficult conversation to have with someone.
Yeah. So both of you kind of hinted at the other side of the coin. So the question started out as, what do I do if I'm in a relationship with a person who's a bad influence? What I got off of what you two were saying is, what if I'm the bad influence? Like, what if I realize that I'm the one that's creating some of the problem? Which is a great position to be in because you have a chance to fix it, to work on it and change it for the better. So if you stop and step back from the situation and say, well, wait a second, there's chaos in this relationship. How much of a role do I play with this? And not in a self-condemning sort of way, but just in an honest, like, I want to fix this, there's value in the relationship. I want to preserve this and make it better. So to me, that's coming at it from a positive point of view, even if the behavior itself is negative. I mean, we all bring shit to the table.
Of course.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, right. And I should have been more clear that's how I meant that question. It's like, there's a lot of people like Chad. Let's just use Chad or myself as an example. Like I was the problem, but I didn't see it until I started to see it in my kids or my wife or my coworkers. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, everybody else is acting a little different towards me. And I think you even alluded to that last week, Chad, in our conversation, didn't you?
Yeah, when I see my boys, it's one thing that hit me hard. Like, I do not want them to have to grow up in an atmosphere where they're feeling like they've got to, automatically protect themselves all the time, and like they're fighting out of a corner, So me, obviously kids are going to throw a fit. It's part of being a kid, right? They're, their brains aren't fully developed. They can't make rational decisions. Like I said, hell, I'm a 40-year-old man. I can't, manage my emotions at times. So for me to have the expectation of these little human beings to regulate their emotions is it's not going to happen. So instead of getting pissy with them, I'm learning to give them the space to have that emotion in, right? Like, go ahead and have your shit storm, get pissy. I get it that you're angry. Come talk to me when you're not, because it's just once I throw more fuel on the flames, it's not worth it. So it's not good. It's taught me how to sit back a little bit more.
Talked about this a couple of times, but Dr. Dave, I'd love you to double down on it. So let's say we are at that moment where we go, okay, I'm the problem. The common denominator here is me. What's a good first step? Yeah. Because awareness, I guess, is the first step. So what's the good second step?
Yeah. Well, let me throw everybody a lifeline here.
Love this.
Because if if there's a situation where there's conflict and you somehow are in the middle of it, you're involved in it. So there's something that you're contributing to the situation, right? So again, I don't say that in a condemning sort of way, but as an invitation to engage in taking a look at it, right? So if there's conflict going on, right, the entire world cannot be made up of assholes. You have to play a role in eliciting some of that behavior from other people. And so just getting to that step of saying, okay, I think I have a role here, and then stepping back and trying to find a way to take an honest assessment of your role in the situation. Some things belong to other people, some things you're contributing to it. It may not be easy to identify that at first, right? So that's why it takes some looking at, try to see what the patterns are. Every time this happens, it turns into an argument. Well, what is it about that situation? And a lot of times it's early childhood things that you're bringing to the table, early childhood things that your spouse or partner is bringing to the table, or could even be a friend. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship necessarily, that's creating conflict. If you know something about what the other person's buttons are, then it helps you to not inadvertently set something off or take a strong reaction the wrong way. Right, you can step back and say, okay, that's coming from their childhood stuff, and I'm not going to get offended about it. I know where that is. It's not about me necessarily. And the better you know yourself, and you know what types of things set you off related to childhood. If you had an overbearing parent that every time you tried to do something positive, they criticized you. Well, you're going to be very sensitive to criticism in adult relationships, right? Somebody says something that's a little bit, colored to you, and all of a sudden now you're upset and offended. Well, that goes all the way back to childhood. The person didn't necessarily mean to offend, right? That's you, right? So trying to figure that out for yourself, and everybody, it's going to be different. Everybody's childhood is different, and everybody brings different things to the table.
Hey, Jamie, welcome to the conversation. Chad, unless you've got anything to add, I'd love to ask another question, but feel free to jump in.
No, I mean, point on again with Dr. Dave, like I said, I when you recognize those things, it's huge, right? So I recognize my stuff. You've got to realize the common denominator in the room and, move forward with it. But yeah, what's that next question looking like for us?
Well, while you were talking about that, you said, Dr. Dave, you said, so they're bringing their childhood stuff and they're bringing their childhood stuff. And so while I'm very quick to remind people that none of us are broken, right? You may feel busted as hell, but you're not broken. You might be bent to a very different formation, but you're not broken. So pardon my question, but how do two broken people function together in a really good way? Like, because in some respects, you've got the blind leading the blind, you got the hurt, helping the hurt. And so how do we help two bent people, let me say it better, how do we help two bent people be better together? Yeah. Because if they both are bringing their shit, then we've got a shitstorm.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the place to start is deliberately giving each other space. And that can mean a couple of different things. So assume that the other person is not deliberately trying to be harmful to you. Right. Assume.
God, that's hard. Yeah, I like that though.
Yeah, but I think before any argument proceeds, assume the other person is not deliberately trying to harm you. Right. I mean, there are some relationships where things have degraded to the point where you are trying to deliberately harm each other. Right. So I'm assuming that there's a measure of goodwill in the relationship, and that both people are really trying to treat each other well, and things just keep getting in the way of it, right? So that's the first assumption. If you assume that, you're less likely to get angry and overreact in the situation. You're more likely to step back and say, okay, well, what my partner just said hurt. I'm going to assume that it wasn't intended for hurt. Let's try to discuss it and figure out what happened here. What is it that caused that reaction? Mm-hmm. And it could be everything from, I didn't sleep well last night to I'm stressed with deadlines. We're having some financial struggles, and that's creating anxiety. There's a lot of things that have nothing to do directly with the quality of the relationship that kind of create tension in the system. And then you throw one more thing that is related to the relationship into that situation, and all of that tension gets let out in that moment, even though maybe 70% of it has nothing to do with that exact interaction.
It's such a solid tip to give grace. And I love that, we had Sam on my podcast, Learn from People Who Lived It. And he said, he was talking about some book, and he said that the book kind of breaks it down like basically there's three kinds of people in the world. There's good people, there's ignorant people, and there's evil people. And, a lot of the things that we do to get it wrong is we put the ignorant people and we slide them in the evil category when they're not trying to be mean. And so I love that piece of advice. Let's not assume that they're coming at you from a place of animosity, anger, agitation. Let's kind of assume that maybe they're just trying to articulate their thoughts and they're doing a bad job of it. But, maybe they're just trying to articulate their thoughts. Don't you think that's certainly true of you, Chad, in a way that, because it sounds to me like your wife, Carrie, was that person for you. She offered you a lot of grace, and she looked at you in those moments of despair, and she said, this isn't my husband. This is something else happening inside of him right now, and I need to allow a little bit of grace so we can move through this.
Yeah, 100%. And even, she knew there was things that she was doing that were triggering me, because once she figured out what the triggers were and we talked about it and discussed, she's like, oh shit, I actually do that. So, then she was like, okay, I need to be aware of my emotions and how I confront something, because that triggers him and then he feels defensive. And then you get this wild circle, right? This cycle. Yep. So it's been like, I always say it's got to come back to communication. And I have not always been a great communicator, but man, has my wife taught me some stuff, even books, I'm huge on self-help and trying to read and just learn as much as you can. One of my favorite books is, The 4 Love Languages.
Oh yeah, of course.
And the reason I like that is, for a lot of guys that have never heard of this book, it really kind of gives you an idea how you want to be loved, but yet how you show your love with somebody else, and vice versa, what your partner's love languages are, so you can, feel their gas tank, you're hitting all their love buttons. So just understanding languages like that, it helps me understand like what I've got to do to be a better father, or, a parent, or whatever. Like how are they loved? How do I help them be a better person, which in turn makes me a better person? And again, I think it all just comes down to communication.
Dave, for veterans specifically, there's certain levels of communication in the military, right? There are certain things that it's okay to communicate, and there's certain things that, there's this weird unwritten code that you don't talk about. And all too often, if you're on the struggle bus, that's the stuff you're not talking about. Like, you'll be great at letting all of the folks around you know it needs to be done in order to complete or do something, but you're never, ever going to talk about the other stuff. So now you're out. Now you're not in the military anymore. Now you're in the civilian life that Chad talks about all the time. And now you're in a position where it's a good idea for you to communicate your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings, but you're not used to it. Let's talk about how somebody can get started, because oftentimes Chad's right. I was a radio broadcaster for 27 years. I promise you, people are awful at communicating. I know communication, and most people suck at it. Most people have no idea what words to use or how to say. And I'm not bagging on anybody, but it is a skill that you can develop. It is a skill that you can work on to be better.
Right. And I think what you're talking about is tact.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe so.
I mean, you can say words, but if you go into the situation with no clue how those words are going to land on the other person emotionally, I think it's helpful, especially for people that to kind of flip the board around and look at things from their perspective before you open your mouth, and think about, if I say this, how is this going to be received by the other person? Or if I say it in this particular way, how is it going to be received? Now, if you're trying to score points and do harm to the other person, right, you'll find the most offensive way to say it, and maybe that might be subtle. It might be a jab that that only they're going to get, right? But where's that going to get you if that's how you're going to approach communication? It's going to create more chaos. but I think kind of turning the board around and looking at the situation from the other person's perspective before talking about anything of substance. If it's an ongoing conflict that really needs to be addressed, kind of think it through before speaking.
I love that. Let's tackle this one right here because it's and Jamie, thank you. Jamie's a former military and been a guy that I've interacted with over the last dozen years quite a bit. And I love what he says here because this happens to, at least I think, guys all the time. Like there's something happens, we just want to go be alone. And that happens to be the moment when our spouse wants to hammer it out and work the whole problem out and find the solution at the same time. And we're kind of in that place like, whoa, not now. So let's bat that around a little bit.
Yeah, I've had many conversations with couples about that very thing. So part of the problem there is if you're dealing with somebody who has PTSD and they're feeling kind of heated, any discussion about the matter in that moment is only going to escalate into a full-blown argument, because once anger kicks in, you're no longer thinking clearly. It's just fight or flight, and you get kind of tunnel vision and selective hearing, and that's no time to have a substantive discussion about something.
A meaningful conversation. Right.
So, part of finding that space is allowing the other person to be alone for a while. Now, there's a balance there, right? So sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it." You can't just
disappear, right? You can't just disappear. That's not part of the deal.
Or never come back to it.
Right.
I mean, you're entitled to have some time to cool down. But you should also make the time then when everything is calm to go back over the issue and discuss it. If not, then I could see a situation where, if you kind of blow it off, you do that a few times and then your spouse is not going to let you off the hook. And so now you've lost your opportunity to get the space that you actually need. So there's push and pull on both sides with this.
Right. And it is one of these things, right, Chad, where you got to like lay down your sword. You got to get humble quick. You got to chew on a big old piece of humble pie and go, all right, that didn't happen the way I wanted it to. Could we try that again?
Yeah. Again, I think it all comes back down to communication, right? I mean, for me, if we ever have one of those moments, like Carrie and I know now, like we don't even have to exchange verbiage. It's essentially body language. Like, hey, I need 5. I'm going to go. We'll revisit this later. And then, obviously we talk different perspectives of it. And then you understand that thought process of that person and yours. And then you kind of lay, like you said, you lay down the sword, or you knock over the brick wall, because now you're open to it, because you kind of got caught off guard. So what's that do? It just makes you defensive. So, to the question there of, got to open it up, got to talk to the wife. Hey, give me 5 minutes outside on the patio and we'll revisit this. But communication, I say, has always been massive key. And it's something I keep driving home constantly.
Yeah. It just looks different for so many people. And you can see where, and I'm agreeing with you, Dr. Dave, you can see where, if somebody was like, I need just a few minutes and then we'll talk about it later. But if they don't come back and they don't handle it, then there's a lot of things happening, right? Your spouse isn't feeling seen. They aren't feeling heard. They feel like you don't care about what they care about. And I always, one of the things that this line that I deliver in my keynote speech is, if you're feeling it, isn't there a chance they're feeling it too? And that's so true in so many relationships. And the reason that I utter that line is to say, like, it already feels like crap and like garbage now. So let's stay in the crap and garbage lane. Let's work it out so it can be better. We don't have to keep eating the same food. We can actually learn something so we can cook better food. That is a possibility, right?
Yeah, I think you're right in that both people are feeling it, right? If there's tension in the relationship, both people are feeling it. But the path forward may look very different to one side versus the other, right? So one side might feel the tension and feel a need to completely withdraw from it and pull away. The other side might get anxious that they're losing the other person and then desperately cling on to them and choke them out. Right. So you could have two different paths forward that kind of cancel each other out and make the situation worse. But I guarantee you that if one person is feeling it, the other person is probably feeling it too.
Yeah. Well, and so let's kind of head back to where we started, which is this idea of being a toxic person and having to deal with that individual because, well, Dave, I mean, go ahead and speak to it. I know you have more to say on it.
Yeah. So I think going back to the original premise of the question, what do you do if you're in a relationship with somebody that you see as having a bad influence on your kids or is somehow toxic in the relationship? I think that assumes that you've had some conversations about it that haven't gone well, or that you've had conversations about the problem that didn't result in any substantive change, or maybe the person is kind of doing the opposite or is indifferent to your concerns about it. Take some time and figure out for yourself where the hard lines in the sand are for you. What line would have to be crossed for you to say, that's it, the relationship is over, and it's irredeemable and there's no way that we can proceed forward anymore? And then what does that look like? What does it look like to get out of this relationship? That takes a lot of courage because, as I said before, it may involve a financial calculation. It may involve taking an assessment of what your support structure looks like. Who do you have outside of that relationship that can be a support to you if you decide to end the relationship? So there's a lot of things that need to be considered. But once you've thought that all the way through, I think it's important to have a line that once that line is crossed, the switch is flipped and you're done. Unless you see a definite pivot on the other person's side, right? So not just an empty promise of, I'll try to be better next time, and you don't see anything different, but there has to be a pivot point, and that's different.
I think don't you think like lines in the sand, good lines in the sand, things like addiction, things like abuse, those are hard lines in the sand. If the relationship is being crossed in a way where you're now engaged to an addict, that's different. That's a line that's going to make it pretty tough to be in a good rational space. And here's the other thing, right? They're not going to like it. Nobody's going to like it when we get to that point where we have to separate things, but it is necessary. So, as we've said several times, there are so many people in your life that are just chapters. They're just characters in this chapter, and they have no business in chapter 7. They don't have any business. They don't have a place there. And that's okay. It's all right and I like what you said, come up with a plan, break it down. I mean, as you're talking to me, Dave, I'm so I don't know what the word is, but what I'm thinking is get out a notepad, write down, here's the person I'm going to call. Here's the person I'm going to call. Here's the person I'm going to call. How much is it going to cost to stay here? I'm going to work those calculations out of my head. I'm going to understand what my exit strategy looks like so that I know how to achieve it. Because if I don't ever really measure it, it's just going to be this thought and this idea that sits out there that never really gets dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you how I personally handle anxiety. I think things through to every possible conclusion and try to figure out what it would take to manage with that. And once I've exhausted all those things and I realize that even if the worst low possibility situation comes to pass, I'll be fine. It's going to suck. It may involve some pain. It may involve making some decisions that I really would rather not make, but I'll be okay. Now, all of a sudden, I can backtrack that, and anything less than the worst case scenario is even better. And I know I can survive the worst case scenario, even though I may not want to make some of those decisions. Then that takes away the anxiety because you now at least have a sketched out plan of what each contingency looks like. When you don't specifically address it, that question that's left unanswered in your mind pings around and just generates this anxiety because you don't know what it is that you're dealing with. So I kind of take the doomsday approach as let's think this all the way through to Armageddon. And if I can survive that, then everything less than that'll be fine.
It's great. It's great. What do you do, Chad? Give me your take on this.
I just laughing because there's so many similarities in just what he said with anxiety. I'll take this shit to the depths, right? I got eaten by a white shark. Oh, I survived that. They only got the leg. No big deal.
Right.
But
they have cool prosthetics these days, right?
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
right,
it. I got
right.
great prosthetics. We'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's hard lines that you definitely have to draw. And like you said, whether it's, addiction or whether it's abuse or even if it's verbal abuse, right? There's all types of different abuses out there.
Mhm.
My other thing is too, is like, if you're not growing as a couple, someone's always getting left behind, so, if you have to, continually have the same conversation about something over and over and that person's not putting in the effort, eventually you're going to start questioning, like, is this worth, going through? Because, okay, how many times do I got to repeat myself? Like, let's work on this together, So again, it comes down to communication and understanding that as a couple, you're going to grow. And, it's wild to me. It's been a wild train ride for me because I've never been in a relationship that's, you've had somebody stand by your side and support you, so.
It's weird, right? Like you almost don't know what to do with it sometimes. It's so true. People who grow up in toxic families and environments, they you said it earlier on, right? You almost mess things up because that's what you're used to. And that can create a real problem for you and for everybody else around you. And the other thing that I would love to spend a couple of minutes talking about is the actual words. I'm big on this. It's like, if you're feeling like something isn't not right and you can feel that there's tension in your relationship, I believe that the best thing you can do is be honest about it to a fault and literally open up your mouth and say, I feel like something is off and I don't know how to articulate it. Are you feeling this too? And then you can launch off into your conversation. Let me tell you how most people do it. Something's all fucked up and I don't know what to do about it. Who wants to help that person?
Yeah.
Right? Who wants to help that person? So the idea that you come in, like I said, eating that huge piece of humble pie, and you say, something doesn't feel right. Might be me, might be you. I don't know, but I would love to figure this out right now. Are you comfortable with that kind of language, Dr. Dave?
Yeah, you've entered into problem solving mode, and that's a whole lot better than accusation mode.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I always like, because I'm not the cleanest speaker, I just kind of straight to the point, always, whether it's a family member or a friend or Carrie, right, my wife, say, hey, I've got to tell you this. I know it's probably not going to come out right, but just hear me out and let's talk about this. So,
I love that. I love that sentence, Chad.
Because then I feel I can be me and just blah, as opposed to try to articulate and put all these fancy sentences and shit together. It's just like, hey, I'm just going to vomit here. I know there's some stuff that's probably going to hurt or not sound great, but work with me through this and let's actually talk about this. So that's a way I articulate it with the wife.
When it gets you back to what Dave was saying, right? Like, don't assume that everybody's out there to attack you. Don't assume that just because I'm trying to sift through communicating this to you that there's venom attached to it. Like some people can switch modes into this problem solving mode and genuinely want to work on it. And as we know, with regards to mental health and wellness, that happens to be one of those illnesses that you kind of have to jump on opportunity. When you're having a good day and you're in a good mood and you're in the mood to solve a problem, you need to lean into that because it can be tough to get into the space, especially if you're having a hard time. You guys know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I give myself grace. I know I have bad days and I will beat myself up. Oh, you should have been doing this. You should have been calling. But it's like, no, my body, my mind, everything's telling me to slow down and take a break, right? There's no reason driving that bus off the cliff. So take the breaks that are needed.
Yeah, for sure. Next week when we get together, I would love to talk a little bit about TBI, and only because I read this article this week that really got me thinking about all of the different ways that a TBI is going to impact a relationship. So cue yourselves up to get into that space next week. And if any of our viewers have any questions here as we get ready to wind down, I'll please let me know. And Jamie, I really appreciate you chiming in and asking that question today, because it's such a useful conversation. It happens so much, right? Like, come on, every marriage has its moment where somebody wants to deal with something and the other person does not want to touch it.
Right.
It happens so much. And if we can work through these little simple interactions, because who's the guy that's on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere? He's the doctor with the gray hair. Oh God, help me out. He's
Drew? Dr. Drew?
No, gosh, it's not him. He's just cool. He's up here and he talks all the time. And do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Not a clue.
Dr. Jeffrey no. Oh, the people, you guys will know who I'm talking about. He's got a great sense about him. I don't even remember why I brought this up anymore, but we'll get to him next week. But he's got this thing that it's a brain fart and we're live. So I'm just going to skip past it right now because it's not going to come to me. The fog of COVID is still very real. I've been 17 days later now, and I still have a little bit of fog in my brain where I'll be like in the middle of a sentence and it goes, and I can't remember what the hell I was talking about. And I just talking to my buddy Chris today because he got COVID and he's got the same thing. He's like, I was on the phone last night. I was talking to somebody and mid sentence, I was like,
that's the
worst.
worst.
I talking about again? It's the worst. It's the worst. COVID's everywhere. All right, Jamie. Yes. Thank you very much. Head into that meeting. Make it a great meeting. I hope it's awesome. And we'll see you guys in the next. Jordan Peterson. That's totally it. Yes. You just put me in the private chat. That's exactly right. Now I don't remember why I brought it up, but Jordan Peterson is that guy. And he's got something that he says that was, anyways.
He's got good nuggets. He's got some good ones out there.
When you did the voice, that's what made me think of him. Like Kermit the Frog, he gets made fun of for that.
Hey, it's fine. I just like, that is a little bit what he sounds like. He's up in his throat a little bit, as we broadcasters say. Well, I'm headed to hockey evaluations tonight. Desert Vista Hockey has their evals. We're going to see which kids make the D1, D3, and JV teams tonight. I'm looking forward to that. Dr. Dave, I understand you got a little adventure coming up here in Sedona.
Doing Broken Arrow with the Arizona Broncos group. About 20 vehicles are going to be going out, so it'll be good.
Are you ready? Are you prepped? I know you had your class. Do you feel like you're smarter than all of them?
Probably not. I don't think I'm going to end up on my side, so that's good. But what's nice is the group is mixed experience levels, so they welcome rank amateurs, and there's some people there that have a lot of off-road experience. We'll have two-way radios, so it'll be a professional deal.
Are you guys? Cool. Do you have to change tires when you guys go do this when you're out there, or you just
go
on the rig that you are?
Air down to 25 pounds.
That's it.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. Nothing like. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but nothing like rolling like a $80,000 Bronco on its head.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Good. I love it. I love it.
If we have a moment, one of the things that comes up frequently. When I talk to veterans, especially folks that are dealing with disabilities and isolation, it's hard as an adult to make new friends because you get caught in your own circles. And the advice that I give people is to find an activity, find a place where you see the same people week after week, and the relationships will develop over time. Mm-hmm. But if you don't put yourself out into an activity where the same people show up, there's no chance you're going to make friends. It's time on task. It's just being around people and getting to know each other in casual situations, and then friendships develop out of it.
Well, I'll echo that with something my friend Dr. Camilla Pekka says, which is you cannot heal without relationship. We need each other. And even if it feels a little unnatural for a few weeks, push through that because the eventual will be there. And you're going to find yourself amongst a great group of guys, and you really never know what's going to happen in these spaces. You're going to meet, what do they always say? Your net worth is your network. And so if you can surround yourself with good quality people, you raise your capital. Just raise your capital. Yeah, that's good advice. Well, and a great place to end. Chad, I want to make sure everybody knows that you've got the apparel line right there. You've got the hats, you've got the shirts, you've got the tumblers, and I'll let you tell everybody why you started this company just to remind them.
Yeah, so we started Mental Joe as a way to raise money for non-traditional modalities and plant medicines, and just kind of bring more awareness to that there's other ways to help with mental health, whether it's TRE, breath work, ketamine, you name it. We're just trying to bring notice and eyeballs to a lot of other different modalities. And with that, like I said, with the people that we partner up with, part of our profits / proceeds is going to go to these different foundations to help people that can't afford, these type of modalities or sense of mental healing. So.
Well, and talk to me just a little bit more about the TRE, because we had Dr. Berselli on, so our audience kind of knows him and that method, but you're getting ready to teach that on a more consistent level, right?
Correct. In fact, we're going to be at Moment of Truth, which is just kind of out here in that Surprise, Peoria area. We kind of found a home. Again, they're called Moment of Truth, and a great little spot, great little yoga studio, great people. And we start, I believe, August 16th. We're going to start doing weekly TRE sessions there for the tension and trauma release exercises and teaching that to folks as well. So pretty excited to get that back on the ground, since COVID's kind of put us on a pause for almost 2.5 years.
Right on, man. About to shake it up, literally.
That's it. Release that psoas muscle.
I'm excited about it. All right, Dr. Dave, stay upright, stay safe, stay on all four wheels. We'll see you next week. And Chad, good luck to you with the apparel line this week. And I'll let you know how the hockey tryouts go next week. How about that?
Sounds great. Love it.
Okay. Gentlemen, appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching.